So our first question for tonight goes, how to find the balance between patient forbearance, tolerating difficult conditions or people, and putting boundaries to harmful situations and people? Meaning, how do we know whether we use a difficult situation or person to train our minds, and whether we just have to leave a situation to protect our body and sanity? For example, when confronted with a person with narcissistic psychopathic traits.
Good question. Obviously, there's no simple answer, but our aim in the practice is always to reduce our suffering. So you have to look at what you're doing if it's in terms of how you relate to other people, how you deal with them, how you interact with them. Are you creating more suffering for you, more suffering for them? Are you increasing your attachments and delusions and your anger, or are you able to manage that or even reduce the causes of suffering from your mind in this relationship? So you got some guidelines there, but how it goes with each person you're involved with in life, whether it's at work, family, social circle of friends, you have to reflect on what's going on in certain situations. And sometimes one rule of thumb I got from Ajahn Chah is that you've usually got a greater store of patience, compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom than you think you do. We often take the easy way, I can't cope with this person, and just try and get rid of them from my life. We leave them, or they leave us, or push them away, or whatever. But often we have more resources of these good qualities than we realize. The same with work, the same with different situations. Maybe it's more personal, like when you're ill or something. We often have a lot of patience available, a lot of mindfulness, a lot of compassion and wisdom available. We just have to draw on it. So if your first reaction to a situation, say with another person, is, I can't stand them anymore, this is the end, no, I can't go on, this is terrible. Well, okay, it may be difficult, challenging, but don't rush to do anything yet. Just see what is your real level of tolerance or compassion in this situation, because you may actually find you can go further or do more than you realize. But if you have already contemplated like that and you've reached your limit and you realize, this person is just causing me endless suffering and I can't cope, and it's affecting me, maybe affecting other people around me as well. Well, sometimes we have to make difficult choices and decisions in life, and sometimes we have to move on or change things in some way, like you say, set boundaries, look after ourselves, because there's no point living in a situation. If you have a choice, there's no point just living and being miserable or suffering unnecessarily. If you've reached your limit, well, then maybe you have to do things. So of course, each situation, each person, each situation is different. I can't really generalize here, but you have to reflect on what's going on, cause and effect, and get to know your limits, but also don't underestimate yourself, because sometimes we can do more or take on more than we realize. And that's one of the amazing things about humans. If you understand how human birth takes place, and I don't just mean biologically, spiritually, or in terms of Dhamma, we're here because we made good karma in the past, and consciousness was ready for a rebirth as a human. We had enough good qualities to be born as human. And we may have all those qualities with us and we don't realize. Being a human being is not a small thing. We have great potential. We have intelligence, we have compassion, we have all kinds of mental strengths and resilience that we can draw on. So don't rush to judge yourself or a situation before you've checked whether you really brought all your good qualities up into that situation yet or not. As I said, I think a lot of people are a little timid or a little reluctant to bring out their best qualities. So see if there's more you can do before you make any difficult decisions, or before you do something you regret. Maybe see what reserves of patience, mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom you have. And you sometimes can surprise yourself, and it's maybe you can get through things that you didn't think you could get through. That's just an observation I've had of people and the difficulties they face in their life.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Dear Ajahn, may I ask, how do we meditate to overcome constant worries? Thank you, Ajahn.
Ajahn Chah would say the shortcut to end worries is just recollect death. We're all going to die. I'm going to die. You're going to die. Whatever this problem is that's causing you worries will die. Bring out the reflection on death, and it's very kind of sobering and brings you back to the present moment and cuts through a lot of anxiety. A lot of our anxiety and worries about what may happen in the future, and 99% of the time the thing doesn't happen, or doesn't quite happen in the way you predict, because you're only imagining the future. It hasn't happened yet. So that's another reflection. The future is just a thought. It's just imagination at this stage. It won't be exactly as you think. Or introduce the idea of death. Maybe I'll die first, so it doesn't matter. If I die tonight, all that stuff I've been worrying about will finish. It doesn't matter. If I die, not just tonight, if I die in the next half an hour, then that's the end of it. Those worries don't matter anymore. It's very simple. You're just being very direct and pointing to the fact that everything is impermanent, unknown, but death is known. You're going to die, so it cuts through a lot of worries. Some of our anxiety is about the past, regrets, worries about things we've said and done that maybe weren't the best, or didn't have good outcomes, or unpleasant things that have happened to us maybe. So sometimes we have to accept the past is finished, it's over. You can learn from it, but you can't change it, because you can't go backwards in time. So you have to accept it. You have to keep bringing up that awareness. The past is finished. Don't worry. What do they say? No use crying over spilt milk. The milk has been spilt, so just accept that. And next time, try not to spill it. I know that may bring up more worries, but you just establish yourself in mindfulness in the present moment as much as you can. Do the best you can in each situation, and let the past go, because you can't change it. So sometimes the worry is about the past, sometimes about the future. Find ways to bring yourself back to the present moment, establish mindfulness, and cut through things. We waste so much mental energy worrying about stuff we can't change or can't influence. So teach yourself about that. In Australia, we have this phrase, no worries. So use that, no worries. You just accept things, just get on with it, do the best you can. And if there's nothing you can do, just get on with life. No worries.
Sadhu. Another question. Luang Por, how do we deal with people who habitually lie, yet deny and shift blame to others?
Well, there's a lot of them out there. Half the world, it sounds like sometimes. So you'll get lots of practice at it. So they're helping you, aren't they? They're helping you to be more mindful, more patient, more forgiving, and to let go of all your reactions, your despair, your frustration, your sense of injustice. That's the world, isn't it? So, of course, if you can avoid those people, we'll avoid them. But you can't always avoid them, because the world is full of them. So, have a strategy. When I meet the person who's the liar or the difficult person, how am I going to deal with it? Well, the Buddha always said, establish yourself in mindfulness, keep the precepts. So even if they're very frustrating, annoying, don't give in to your anger. Learn to restrain your anger. So you may, on the inside, still have a lot of emotion coming up, but don't do something you'll regret or that causes more suffering for you or for others. So keep the precepts, establish mindfulness, and reflect. If you meet people who are not well behaved, they lie, they cheat, they don't do what they should do, they're not acting in the best way as a good human being, they're creating karma for themselves. They're going to suffer for that. And you don't have to do anything. They're going to suffer for sure anyway. That's how karma works. So really, be compassionate, they're actually making bad karma for themselves. They're going to suffer. If you can do something, it depends who it is, doesn't it? If it's someone you're in a position to help them, maybe give them advice if you can, but often we're not in a position to do that. So you just have to let it go. And so they're going to have to cope with the consequences of their actions. And where it's affecting you, or just try to protect yourself the best you can. So sometimes you get out of a situation, or you're very careful around that person because you know how they are. But if you do know how they are, one thing, you don't have to suffer anymore because you know how they are. If you know someone is a liar or dishonest, unreliable, once you know that, then that's what you know. That's what you expect. So if they display those qualities again, you go, oh, I'm not surprised. I've seen it before. So you manage your behavior, modify your behavior, how you deal with them, because now you know what they're like. So if you know someone's dishonest or doesn't mean you well, don't give them all your trust and tell them all your secrets and ask them to look after your money. You have to learn how to be careful around people who are not reliable. But it doesn't mean to say you have to be angry or punish them or hurt them. You simply have to respond in a careful way with them. That's living in the world. The world is full of things that are not ideal, not the best. So we have to learn how to be patient with that and get on with our lives, do more good ourselves. That's another reflection, isn't it? Like if someone is behaving badly or in an immoral or unskillful way, rather than spending all the time getting angry with them, come back to yourself and say, do I do that? Could I tell lies? Could I treat others in the way this person is treating them? You come back and see if you have the same qualities in yourself, and that's where you can improve things. They're going to have to learn for themselves what they need to do. You have to learn for yourself. So that's where you come back to. How can I improve my own sila, my own morality, my own mindfulness?
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Dear Luang Por, I try to maintain the 8 precepts whenever I can. My doubt is about the 7th precept. I don't use adornments or perfume, but can we use shampoo, soap, deodorant? Thank you so much.
Well, in moderation, even monks use soap. Shaven head don't need shampoo, soap will do. So we're very easy. Sometimes it's good to go to the minimum first and then see if you do really need something extra, you add it on. So some people need shampoo for skin conditions, or if you have long hair, maybe you need shampoos. Ordinary soap is not enough. Well, use it wisely and reflecting. You're just using it to keep yourself clean rather than to beautify yourself. The purpose of the precepts is to minimize sensuality, sexual desire, sensuality. If you're keeping 8 precepts, you're not out, you're not going on a date, you're not looking to impress other people or getting lost in the world of image and all of that kind of projection of self. You're cutting it out, you're simplifying your life, and it's actually very peaceful. So your behavior, say, in the bathroom reflects that. You probably don't need deodorant. Monks don't usually use deodorant. You just get rid of that. But you wash every day, so you have some bar of soap or some liquid soap. You just use what's necessary for basic hygiene, and because you have to live with other people maybe, so you're not smelling too much. You just do the basics. But you don't, say if you're a monk, like we try not to choose smelly brands if we can, if we have a choice. You don't choose the most perfumed brands of shampoo, soap. Because Ajahn Man, Luang Por Man, and Ajahn Chah as well used to call monks who smelt too good and say, "Oh, here comes the playboy." Because that's what, people going out on a date do. They try and smell nice and impress the partner. If you're practicing 8 precepts, you're going in a different direction. You're going in the direction of celibacy, restraint, cutting out all of that. Save some money. You don't need to buy those products when you're keeping the 8 precepts. Just keep it simple. And when I used to go into camping in the forest by myself, just bathe in a river, sleep on the forest floor, I used to have 1 bar of soap, sunlight soap. I don't know if you know that brand. It's totally unperfumed, and you can use it for washing clothes, washing your alms bowl after food. You can use it for washing your body. So I'd have 1 bar of sunlight soap and try and make it last a month, although that was quite hard work. So I never smelled very good, but I didn't smell too bad either, and I was on my own, so it didn't matter. More extreme, but you probably don't need to go this far. You can use ashes from the fireplace. If you have a wood heater or a fireplace handy, you can keep a bag of ashes, and when you wash in water, you just rub it on, and it takes away the worst of the smell and the grease. But that's quite extreme. You don't have to go that far. Just use a very ordinary brand of soap, and minimize the products, all the beauty products, and no makeup, no beauty products, really. That's the aim.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Dear Ajahn, in the workplace, if there are people who are making our work harder, such as by actively interfering with our work, if we don't act on it or do anything about it, then other people may think that it's okay to be abusive. Most of the times when I act on it, it comes from a sense of righteousness, which is normally not very helpful. Usually I would not act, but then it keeps getting worse. Please, if Ajahn has any advice.
Yeah, it's a very common problem, and not easy to deal with. But like you say, first of all, you have to notice your own reaction, your own emotions. Because even if you are right and someone else is wrong, if you're becoming too angry and frustrated or too conceited, like righteousness is, you think you're right and good and they're wrong and bad, and if that's coming out in the way you relate to them, it may make them worse, and it's also not doing you much good either. So the Buddha encouraged us to go back to ourselves. If you need to talk to someone else about their behavior, first of all, just see if you can establish your own mindfulness, bring up the metta, the goodwill. You're speaking for your benefit as well, but for their benefit too. You're not out to get them or punish them or fight them, or you have to establish your mind in mindfulness, metta, goodwill. Think about what you're going to say. Think about the right time to say it, the right place. Think about that person, who they are, because I don't know your situation, but maybe it's your boss, your manager. Oh, you can't just go and tell them off just like that. You'll be in trouble, won't you? You may lose your job. Maybe it's someone under your supervision. You do need to tell them because they're going wrong and you're in charge of them. Or maybe it's someone who's neither above you or below you in the hierarchy or the system of your work, and it may be exactly the same level. And that's tricky, isn't it? And they'll say, who are you to tell me? So you have to consider these things as much as you can before you engage with the person, or whether you're even going to engage with them. Sometimes you go to a third party, don't you? You think, oh, I'm not the one to tell them. I'll have to tell this other person to tell them or explain to them what the problem is. Sometimes you go to a third party, a trusted third party. Sometimes you wait and see. That can be a useful way of dealing with some situations. You just be patient, and maybe that person will dig their own grave. Sometimes it works like that, but sometimes it doesn't. So sometimes you need to say something, but establish your awareness first. Keep the metta, keep the clarity, so you can speak from a place without getting it too emotional and angry and upset, or judging them too much in your conversation with them, because that will tend to backfire and maybe make things worse. So it's not an easy thing, is it, to discuss someone else's behavior? You have to consider these different aspects. And admittedly, sometimes we make mistakes. You try something, it doesn't work. So then maybe you have to go to plan B, or try some different approach. But I would always encourage you to consider first, consider what you're going to say, if you have to say anything or not. What's the best way, the best time? Consider your state of mind. So you're setting up with the situation for the best outcome. But what outcome you get depends, doesn't it? Some people just get worse. Some people fight back, make you an enemy. In the end, the sort of reflection you have in private on your own may be, well, one day they'll be dead, one day I'll be dead. None of these problems will exist anymore, because we all die. We get old, we get sick, we die. So you don't want to make an eternal enemy out of someone, because you know one day you won't be working there, they won't be working there. You do the best with the situation you can, and some of these reflections help. It gives you perspective. One day you won't know this person. They'll be somewhere else, or you'll be somewhere else. So don't give in to your urge to, make some bad karma and attack them and make a big problem out of it, perhaps. Sometimes you have to reflect and just be very patient and know one day this will change anyway. Whatever I do, this situation will change. But if there's anything you can do to improve it, well, okay, you have a go. See if you can improve it.
Another question. In our meditation and daily life, how to deal with grasping, clinging, and attachment when it arises, and how to prevent it to arise in the first place, such as how to cut the roots of grasping.
Well, that's the question, isn't it? That's why the Buddha became the Buddha. So we're all dealing with this one. In the simplest explanation, when craving arises, abandon it. But to abandon craving, because craving is the cause of suffering, to abandon it, you have to be aware of what's going on. And the trouble is, craving is tricky. It's fast, it's sneaky. Sometimes you're doing something that you think is right or good, and craving slips into your thinking in that very situation. Our mind can change very quickly. So we have to be alert, on the guard, and try to recognize craving in its forms, get to know it, so that when it is arising, you can do something about it. Your aim is to limit it and then abandon it. So limiting it is like you use precepts, say. So, maybe you're so angry with your work colleague, you want to throttle them, but you keep the precepts. So you don't throttle them, you just work with your own craving internally then. So you have the precepts, and then you have mindfulness, and maybe you practice meditation. If you go away later, if you're at work, maybe you can't meditate there, but later on you go and meditate on this problem you have with this other person, say, and you observe craving, how it's arising, what's stimulating it, what situations bring it up, what are the kind of issues that are making you upset, angry, afraid, worried, or greedy. And in your meditation, you become more mindful. Your mindfulness tends to be more refined, more clear. There's more clarity, and you may be able to understand better what's going on and practice some letting go in your meditation. Then when you're back in the situation and the craving is stimulated, you're ready because you've already contemplated it. And maybe you develop some reflections that will help you on impermanence or letting go of negative mind states that lead to suffering, or these should be let go of. You reflect in your meditation and then take some lessons back into daily life, and this will help. And you keep going and you'll get better at it. It's a rare person who'll give up all their craving first time. For most people, it's a long-term project. So you have to invest time, effort, keep at it, keep learning, and you will learn. If you keep putting effort into your meditation and listening to Dhamma and reflecting on it, you will learn. And you'll understand better how to let go of craving, and you'll do it better. And I wish you all the best with it.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Dear Ajahn, may I ask, why does Mahayana Buddhism have so many different Buddhas, such as Amitabha, the medicine Buddha, and various bodhisattvas, while Theravada Buddhism seemingly does not?
They're richer than the Theravadas. More statues, bigger monasteries. Theravadins were very poor in the forest. Maybe have one Buddha statue. It's the same Buddha, the same enlightenment, the same path of practice. So even some Theravada temples have a lot of Buddha statues, and sometimes they slip in a Kuan Yin for good measure and a few other deities. So it really partly is a personal thing, isn't it? Some people are very broad-minded and they love lots of deities and bodhisattvas and Buddhas around. Some people are more straightforward, just one Buddha is enough, Four Noble Truths, going for Nibbana, no extraneous additional stuff. We just keep it simple and go for it. Depends on people's character. And even, in the life of the Buddha, the 80 leading arahants, they're all different in their character. And some were very, what you might call broad-minded or generous. And, they had monasteries with a lot of disciples, and they just built big monasteries, and a lot of disciples came and lived with them, and they gave lots of talks. Others were very ascetic, and they go off into the forest and live quietly on their own or with a few monks. Hardly anybody knows them, hardly anybody knew anything about them. Very quiet, very kind of secluded. People have their different personalities, and when you gain enlightenment, your personality doesn't disappear, you're just not attached to it. Obviously, the unwholesome character traits disappear, but you still have your personality and your character. Only a Buddha gives up that. So, in Buddhism, you would expect there would be people with their different emphases. So some people like the bodhisattva ideal, and that really inspires them. And really, we're all bodhisattvas, because until you're enlightened, you're practicing for enlightenment, to end your craving and suffering. So we're all bodhisattvas. So in a sense, we're all practicing Mahayana Buddhism, if that's how you define it. But then we're all aiming for Nibbana. I assume if you're Buddhist, following the Buddha's teachings, you're aiming for Nibbana, the end of suffering. Every good bodhisattva teaches that. So we're all Theravada Buddhists as well. So this Theravada Mahayana, is often it can be a little bit misleading, and everyone has their own perceptions of it. But I would say, if it's Buddhism, there's one Buddha, one enlightenment, one Nibbana. Everyone is practicing for that, and the way of practice is the same. But some people go out and do a lot of service in society and are very generous. Some people are more reclusive. Just depends partly on your personality, your teacher, your background, your culture, and all these sort of things. They have an influence, but it's just one Buddhism. So I wouldn't make too much fuss about the whole thing. That's my opinion.
Saralumpo. Another question. How can someone identify whether they have attained to stream winner in a previous life?
Why do you need to? Who needs to know about last life? This life is more important. So if you're not keeping the 5 precepts this life, then it's unlikely you were a stream winner last life. The stream winners, they keep the 5 precepts. And so if they're born again, they're going to keep the 5 precepts again. They may make a few mistakes when they're young, growing up perhaps, but then very quickly they're going to fall into line, I think, because they won't want to break the 5 precepts because they don't want to make bad karma and hurt people. Sotapannas have strong, unshakable confidence in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So do you have that? And, doesn't matter whether you had it last life or not. Do you have it this life is the question. If you're still doubting or blaming, like the other day, there was someone, they got ill. They're Buddhists and say, I've done all this good. I've meditated, I've made offerings, I've worshipped the Buddha for so long, and now I'm ill and the Buddha's not helping me. I'm ready to give up. That's not a Sotapanna. Whether it's this life, last life, I don't know. But, Sotapanna doesn't give up on Buddha Dhamma Sangha, whatever, however bad it is, whatever the challenge is, they don't give up. They keep going. They keep practicing with every situation. They keep the precepts. They reflect on the Dhamma. They let go of Sakkaya Ditthi. These are the things we're practicing. So this life is good enough. Just focus on this life and see how craving and attachment is causing you suffering in this life. And if you're doing that, well, maybe you are a Sotapanna already or not. Just keep going, keep doing it. I wish you to be a Sotapanna, but, last life is already over. I don't think we need to think too much about that.
And another question from the same questioner. Is it the case that bodhisattvas do not become stream enterers?
Well, the Buddha became the Buddha. He was a bodhisattva. And we assume he passed through stream entry, Sakadagami, Anagami before he became a Buddha, because that's how he said the progress of the mind, whether it's in one lifetime or in one very short space of time or spread out over several lifetimes. Anyone who reaches Nibbana has gone through that evolution or development of the mind. So the Buddha, who was a bodhisattva, became a Buddha, was a Sotapanna at one point. So bodhisattvas will become Sotapannas if they're going to become enlightened. That's just part of the enlightenment process, the awakening of the mind. You have to abandon 10 fetters to become enlightened or awakened. The first 3 are abandoned by the Sotapanna. First 5 abandoned by the Anagami, the one, a non-returner. So every enlightened Buddha or Arahant will have gone through abandoning these fetters. It's just the way it is. That's just nature.
Saralumpo. Are there any more questions from anyone? We have a raised hand, so I will... Okay, you may ask your question.
Good evening, Lumpo. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for your talk this evening. It seems like there's been a thread in a few of the questions and in other questions that have come up over the weeks and years about letting go, and about one of the questions was about how do you sort of change, control, and manage the world. Seems a common theme. But I've also observed, with, say, monk's life, there's a kind of letting go to the point of surrender, insofar as maybe you're not concerned about tomorrow's meal, that'll come or it won't tomorrow. And other, which is, to me earlier on, it was quite a strange thing. So yeah, and in other religions, if it be the will of Allah, the will of God, whatever, can one develop an attitude of surrender, and is that consistent with the Dhamma, is the question. Thank you.
Well, you're giving up or surrendering to the Dhamma, the Vinaya. So particularly as a monastic in Buddhism, your aim is Nibbana, and you keep that central in your thinking and your action. So if you're fortunate enough, and I think most Sangha these days, because the world is quite well off, get fed. If you're fortunate enough to get fed, well, all the better, because that will help you with your practice. But it's not in the forefront of your mind what meal you'll get tomorrow, or whether you'll get a meal tomorrow. And you're ready if the conditions are such that you miss the meal tomorrow, or no one is available you just don't meet anyone who will feed you, you'll accept it, because your goal is Nibbana, not food, to put it simply. We were talking about this earlier today. There's a famous monk in Thailand called Lumpur Chop, who's a student of Ajahn Mun and a sort of contemporary of Ajahn Chah. And if you read his biography, it's very interesting, and it is translated into English, at least parts of it are. He was a monk. He spent a lot of time in the jungles on the Thai-Burmese border, and he was in Burma during the Second World War, but he had gone into Burma before Thailand got dragged into the Second World War, because Japanese troops invaded Thailand and they formed an alliance with Thailand, even though the Thais didn't want to get involved with the Second World War. Effectively, they became allies with Japan, and so became enemies of Britain and USA and so on. And the British were in Burma, and they started to view Thai Buddhist monks as possible spies for the Japanese, therefore enemies, and spies get shot in those days. So Lumpur Chop was living in Burma. He'd been living there since before the war, but nevertheless, the villages where he was in the jungle, who supported him, were worried that he would get arrested, because the British troops were wandering around arresting monks. And they were asking questions about Lumpur Chop, who was staying alone in the forest. And they said, we're coming back tomorrow. And the villagers interpreted that to mean they're going to arrest him and possibly execute him. So they said, you've got to run for it. You just got to leave now. And we can't help you. You just got to walk back to Thailand. And he started walking. And for many days, he was walking with no food. He could get water in streams in the jungle, but there was no food available, no villages, no people. And he was getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And he just said, I've just got to walk, because if I stay there, they're going to kill me. So I'm going to walk back to Thailand. But whether I get fed, whether I reach Thailand, I don't know. I'll just do this. So he started walking for many days. He's getting skinnier and weaker and tireder, but he hadn't quite reached Thailand yet. And he said he had one thought coming up in his mind, and he said, I practiced all these years and I've really progressed in my practice. I think by then he was already an arahant, or certainly very close to being an arahant, fully enlightened disciple of the Buddha. He said, I practiced all these years. I've surrendered myself to the Dhamma, to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. And now I'm not finding anyone to eat food, to offer me food. Maybe I'm going to die. So I just give up myself to the Dhamma. And, you know, I've been a good monk all my life. He just had a moment of kind of complaint in his mind. He said, he complained that, you know, why isn't anyone helping me when I've done all this good and devoted myself to the best there is in the world, which is Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. But it was just a thought, and then he let it go and he carried on walking. And not long after, he had this one thought, which was a kind of, he said it was a kind of complaint, you know, no food for a week. Is it really this bad? Does it come to this? You know, this one thought after a week of not eating, remember? And very shortly after that, he met a little man, well-dressed, about 30 years old, kneeling down next to a tree in the middle of the jungle when there's miles from any roads or habitation or villages. There's this well-dressed young man, about 30 years old, with a plate of food, kneeling down as he walked up. And he said, you know, can I offer you some food? And Luang Por Chop got his bowl out. He hadn't eaten for a week. He accepted the food. And he asked the man, where are you from? There's no villages around here. And the man pointed upwards, I think, to the, you know, to the mountain, but it could be up to heaven, maybe. He just pointed upwards. Luang Por Chop gave him a blessing, walked on, looked back, and the man disappeared behind a tree, and he never saw him again. And Luang Por Chop and various other monks later believed this person who offered him food was a deva.
Oh.
And they say basically his complaint of nobody's feeding me, not even the devas, was heard by the devas. So they felt compelled to come down and offer him some food, and it saved his life. And he walked on for a few more days, reached Thailand, and lived to tell the tale. So he's held up as the classic kind of forest monk. Is like, you know, if you get food, good. If you don't, it doesn't matter. We're practicing for nibbana, something higher than just the next meal. That's the attitude you develop.
Fantastic. Thank you. Sadhu.
So maybe we'll finish there tonight. We've gone on quite a bit. So thank you very much for joining us.
Some more questions?
Oh, is there another question?
Two more.
Oh, more questions? Okay, carry on. Might as well.
Dear Ajahn, you mentioned earlier in the talk that we should learn how to accept conditions around us. But seclusion is very helpful, at least for me. And to practice, we have to somehow apply effort to set up conditions like meditating, following precepts and such. Even becoming a monk is somehow setting up conditions, is it not? What's the good balance then?
Well, obviously becoming a monk isn't for everyone, but if you can, the monastic life and the training, we would say, is the most suitable for somebody wishing to follow the Buddhist path all the way to Nibbana. So for those who have that opportunity, it's available to them. To join the Sangha may be a very good vehicle towards Nibbana. But it's not for everyone. Some people are not able to do that. They have families, jobs, responsibilities, people to look after, whatever. Or maybe they're too sick, perhaps. So it's not for everyone. The important thing is to learn how to practice with the situation you've got. That's the point I was trying to make. And I think Ajahn Chah used to make that point all the time. You make the best of the conditions you're faced with. You can't always control or make them just right to suit your practice. Sometimes you can, and it's okay to make some effort towards, finding a quiet place to meditate, undertaking precepts, listening to Dhamma, all the things we do. We try to facilitate and support that for our practice and the practice of others the best we can. But up to a point, because you'll never get a perfect situation, I would say. You'll always have some disturbance. Something's not quite right. So you just keep that in the back of your mind so you don't get obsessed with always trying to make the perfect place for meditation, have the right perfect conditions, because you probably spend your whole life seeking that and never quite attain it. So it's more an attitude thing, you know. You can put effort into this, but don't get too obsessed with it.
Sadhu. Next question. Dear Ajahn, how can we find a balance between the wish to ordain and the responsibility of caring for our parents?
Well, so a good question. Everyone is different and in a different sort of stage in their life. So depends on your situation. If you can leave them in a way that they're looked after and you feel confident that they're going to have someone keeping an eye on them, helping them, then maybe you can get away to ordain. But if there's no one to do that, the situation doesn't allow, or maybe you have to do that, and that's a very good way to practice as well. You give your time and effort to your parents, but you do it as a Dhamma practice, so you can still learn to meditate, listen to Dhamma as you look after your parents. You can maybe encourage your parents to practice Dhamma as well. So it just depends on the situation you find yourself in. Sometimes you wait until your parents have passed away, then you maybe have more time to develop your own Dhamma practice. But maybe they'll have a nice long life. So you just practice, you get on with your practice. And if there's other people to help with your parents, maybe you go off and practice, or maybe you rotate. So sometimes you're with your parents, sometimes other siblings or people are with them. All depends on your situation, but try to look around and see what you can do to promote both things, looking after your parents and practicing the Dhamma. And I think you'll find you can merge them together in whatever best way you can. You can do it together. And even monks, sometimes they're looking after their parents, or they bring their parents into the temple to live, or they go back home and live as a monk or a nun helping their parent. There's many variations on this theme. The idea, I think, is number one, recognize the importance of helping parents as they get older or sicker. But also, number two, not to forget your Dhamma practice and see how you can incorporate the two things together.
Sadhu Lumpur. One more question has just come through. Dear Ajahn, my sister has gotten a divorce from an abusive partner in an abusive marriage, but still her ex-partner is shaming her by calling and threatening her employer and trying to ruin her life. Seeking any advice from Ajahn.
Well, I don't want to be flippant, but maybe it's a good time to become a nun. Give up with the married life. Sometimes some people do that. You know, they're just so fed up with abusive husbands, bad relationships. Just drop the whole thing and go off and meditate and join a monastery or something like that. That would be one solution. If you're not ready for that, well, or, you know, it's a difficult time for you, obviously, so I sympathize, but try not to make it worse. So, you know, if they're behaving badly, whether it's lawyers or just attacking you verbally or online or whatever, you know, just try to be patient with all that. It will fade, because if you're not feeding the fire will go out. So they're obviously very angry and trying to get to you. You've been in an abusive relationship, now you're dealing with a nasty divorce. So you just have to be very patient until you get through every aspect of it. The legal part, the emotional part may take longer. And try and get to the point where you're forgiving, letting go, moving on. If the relationship has failed, well, you just want to move on from it, but not with a lot of anger towards your former partner. I would just let them go and let them be free and to get on with their life somewhere else, as you are free to get on with your life. And if they're still hurling abuse, just ignore it until it fades away. They won't hurl abuse at you forever. Just make sure you're safe, physically safe, and then ignore it and get on with your life.
Saro Lumpur. Another question has just come through. Dear Ajahn, how can we help our parents who are not Buddhist and not accumulating good merits?
Number one, be a good example. You know, you've got to be an advert for Buddhism if you want to bring them in and encourage them to practice. You've got to do it yourself, otherwise it won't work, will it? So you've got to put effort into your own practice, learn how to practice generosity, compassion, keep precepts, meditate, listen to Dhamma, respect the Dhamma. The more you put into that, the more you'll understand how you can help your parents, because you'll learn from your own experience and understanding your own mind. And as you practice, you're being a good example. You're already helping your parents, because if you at least develop your practice, this will have a flow back to your parents. But as I said, you may learn ways that you can bring them into the Dhamma in one way or another as you practice for yourself. You become wiser, you become more skillful, and you can use that as you relate to your parents. So put effort into your own practice as much as you can, and from there you'll be able to help them more.
Saro Lumpur. That may be the last question.
Maybe. Well, I'll make it the last question because it's gone on long question and answer session today. So as I said, thank you for joining, and we wish you well in your practice. And may the blessings of Buddha Dhamma Sangha be with you, and we'll finish the session here.